happy Sunday. We're so glad that you decided to tune in with us. We are, of course, it's the fifth Sunday, and so it's a completely different format. And we are joined here with some of our very own young adults. And today we want to have an interesting discussion about progress. Now, I want to remind us before we dig into this conversation that Nineveh has always been a progressive church. That when organs were deemed as sinful, Nineveh had an organ. And we had folks in this church that fought to get one. When drum sets were not popular and people thought that there shouldn't be drums in the Lord's house, then somebody fought that we would have drums in our church. Back in the day, when nobody really had youth departments and youth put youth first, Nineveh was one of the founding members of Lock-In Birmingham. And when there wasn't a whole lot of community outreach, we started a block party where we reached out and we walked the neighborhood and we invited people to church. We have always been on the cutting edge. When it wasn't popular to have screens in the church, we were one of the first Baptist churches in the area to have screens. And the list goes on and on and on. We have a tradition of being progressive. And so this morning, we want to talk about what does it look like in 2021 to be progressive in this age, to be on the cutting edge, and to see more people that look like us among the ranks of the people who call themselves Ninevites. So this morning, I'm joined here by our very own Minister Jamar, our young adults minister here at Nineveh. I'm joined here by Avery, who is my fiance, and we are joined here by Dee, who grew up right here at Nineveh. And we want to have a discussion this morning about what it looks like. So I want to brace you. I think today's conversation is necessary. I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, but we do want to be candid. We do want to talk about the things that would drive us to church and from church. And so I want you to put on your seatbelts. I want us to put on our adult shoes and our adult hat and have a conversation this morning that would breathe some lifeblood into the future of our church. And so this morning, I want to start by talking about what do we like about being here at Nineveh. And I'm going to let Minister Jamar start that one.
Amen. So all the things that you called out, with us being cutting edge, has always been something that attracted me to Nineveh. When I came, I think I was around 15, 16 years old when I first could drive. Because in my house, nobody really went to church. It was me wanting myself to go and push myself to be here. But when I came, I saw the youth, I saw the young people, I saw how vibrant everything was here, and the life and love that was in the church at that time, and that's here still. But I fell in love with the people and the experience. So everything that we were able to do when I got licensed. To me as a young man, that was something special, and especially for a church to accept a young man with tattoos, a young man with kids, a young man that most wouldn't expect to see in the pulpit, and that's something that was special about Nineveh. And also it allowed others to say, hey, if Minister Jamar can do it, I can do it. If Minister Cole can do it, I can do it. And again, just the leadership has always allowed us to do our own thing in a sense, but at the same time, we didn't push the limits and go too far, but at the same time, we didn't really have reins on us to bring us back. So that's what I love about the church and about our pastor. He's always been open to ideas and open to discussion if we come to him with it.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. Good morning, Nineveh. Good morning, family. I think the thing that I love most about Nineveh is the tradition of inclusion. So my mom actually used to sing in the children's choir when she was a little girl. She has a picture of her and my Aunt Benita, is my mom's best friend growing up. And they were in those green dresses, and they were singing with Miss Cheryl, who I didn't have the pleasure of knowing. But my mom wasn't even a member yet, but because she wanted to sing and wanted to be involved, and they fostered that, that sense of worship in her, that she was included and she was welcomed and ordered to be included. I think, a generation on, you see that with me. The first time that I met Pastor Will and Miss Gwen, I understood immediately why they call her Sweetie, because she was so sweet to me, and she just welcomed me with open arms, and she wanted to make sure that she knew my name and how I spelled my name and, where I was from and what I did, and just really, creating that connectivity instantly. She was like, who are your folks? Like, how, I think I know you. And that ability to just be welcomed with open arms, I think, is something that really turned me on to Nineveh. Even Joanne, you know, the first time I met her, she was trying to feed me. And I was like, that's the best way to get me is some chicken salad. Like, I got you. So I think that is something that, even though I haven't been here long, it's something that I have looked for, and I'm honored to be able to be a participant and recipient of, and be able to give that back to other people as they come through the doors of the church as well.
So the reason I kind of wanted to go last on this is because I kind of figured we would all, interestingly enough, have like the same thing, which is inclusion. So for me, inclusion is a part of my answer, but from a different standpoint. I know you touched on kind of like choir and your personal experience, and you touched on, you know, you're a minister and you're walking that regard. For me, the inclusion from a standpoint of new members, that's me growing up. I just remember I would come into church, and you know, I was young, and a lot of the times me coming in was, you know, more so by force, you know.
You were drugged to church.
So, yeah. And so I would just come here, and I would remember, you know, yeah, I would see a lot of the same faces, and I would make friends with a lot of the kids my age, but I would also see on a consistent basis, like, the people coming in from the community, the people who may not be welcomed in other spaces, or if they go into a church, they may be kind of looked at or judged, or, you know, that you could kind of tell that maybe they don't live the kind of life that that in a lot of spaces will be shunned upon. But then they would come to church, and I would see, you know, them every time Pastor Will would say, hey, you know, come to the front, you want to be saved, and he'll put the oil on their head, and you'll always see them the first in line. And I would always think that that's just so, you know, I don't know what these people go through during the week or what it is that they are into, but I do know that they look at church and they can see it kind of like as a safe haven. And they come here, and it's just like their opportunity to maybe refill their glass to make it through another week or another, you know, however many days. And so that would be my thing.
Yeah, that sums it. I think for me, I go back to, well, shoot, I've been here my whole life, like my whole life. But I go back to, and it's kind of the same answer, but how much of a family it feels like. You know, when one of us dies, it's like your aunt died or your uncle died. It's when you show up on Sunday morning, you're laughing and joking like it's Christmas dinner, and you're with family members. And I've always liked the tightness of how some of my favorite people on earth I met here at the church. Some of my favorite play uncles and play aunts I met here at the church. When it comes time to celebrate birthdays, I want to be included too. I want to, you know, because there is that sense of familial bonding. And I realize our church is very much so a family church. There's like 4 or 5 big families that have reproduced and overproduced, and that's a lot of how our church has grown. But I want to pivot. I want to talk to you about what are some of the things that you feel like we could do better.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think a lot of it isn't more so what we could do better, but more so what we could get back to.
I like it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So to add to the point of what I was saying about the inclusivity and you bringing in the family element, the impact that the church will have on the community, the impact at least from when I was a child, growing up, not when it really, but like my teens, and I would see the impact, it just seemed like bigger than life to me.
Okay.
You know, it felt as if, like you said, like that family feel, like people I probably would meet for the first time, people of course I'll see that are like the regulars, they all felt like, you know, extended cousins or, you know, brothers, sisters. And that's just to feel that, I know we were coming off a pandemic and, you know, COVID and all of that, but as we reintegrate and get back into church, that's just something I would really like to see come back into the fold. It's just that family element that having events for the children in the community, what like the basketball and I guess that goes into the events and stuff. But having these things where we target having like after school care or these things to help with the youth and stuff like that. Yeah, kind of like, before I say too much, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Okay, I'll go. I really don't have a dog in the fight because I don't have much to compare it to. I came from another church, and I'm honored to be here and proud to be here. But one of the things that I think I struggled with when I first got here was seeing the church that I'd heard about. And so the church that I heard about with my mom, my grandmother, my auntie Benita was always a hands-on, active, hands and feet of Jesus kind of church. And what I mean by that is, I grew up going to the hair salon down on First Avenue with Benita, and I started seeing her when I was 3 years old, back when she was still with Audrey, and I think, everybody knows these people's names. But I remember sitting in there on a Saturday, and Benita had the kitchen in the back, and she would be cooking for the homeless because the church was going to go out and feed the homeless at the park. And so it smells like Sunday dinner. There's greens, there's dressing, there's a ham, and it was never an idea of, we're just going to feed the homeless. We're going to give them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It's no, we are going to give them our best. We are going to, do the things that we would want to receive. I love my Auntie Nita's greens and some cornbread. And I'm like, dang, I want a plate, but it's not for me, And I think that we see that even in the Bible of when Jesus first started his ministry. Everything that he did was to serve the people in a practical way, even if it was not necessarily something that the church completely agreed with or the Pharisees completely agreed with. I think God is very intentional in his order of how he does things. And so Jesus' first public ministry moment was at a wedding. And it was in order to save someone from the embarrassment of not having enough wine. And he even says to Mary, that doesn't really have anything to do with me, but because I'm here and because I'm in the room and I can do something about it, I will. Yeah, and I think that that's something that I would love to see that the church do more of, no matter how much it may inconvenience me or how much it may bother me or how much I may, be uncomfortable with it. Jesus is our Lord and our example of someone who did stuff that was uncomfortable. He would allow people to be with him. He would touch people who people saw as lepers or as someone who they shunned upon. The woman with the condition of blood is so powerful just because the law said that she couldn't even be outside of her house. And all of these people were touching him, and he says, "Who touched me?" And the disciples kind of look like, "What you mean? Who touched you?" Or when he's about to be arrested to go to Calvary, and Peter cuts off somebody's ear, and Jesus picks his ear back up and hands it back and puts it back on and instantly heals him. I think it's that opportunity to be light in a dark place and to do things that are very unconventional, but welcoming with open arms in a way that where Jesus would. So, I may not necessarily agree with what's going on or how it's going on, but because God is leading me and because the Spirit is leading me and showing me how to do it, I'm equipped to do it in order to open the door for another dimension and another realm of his glory to come upon us.
And Avery hit on it, so I'll say this and it'll be short, but to get back to what God really wants the church to do, not just Nineveh, but all churches in particular. That's teaching the way God, puts it on their heart, and not us following man. I think that's what a lot of churches have gotten to, where they follow the preacher, follow the deacons, follow a person, but we're getting away from God. So I think churches need to get back to that, and that's one thing that I've seen just during this pandemic is what's been going on.
I agree. All right. So I want to ask the question: If you could build a church full of all of the things that you have seen in your lifetime, what if you could put some stuff in the pot and you could take a piece of here and a piece of there and a piece of that and a piece of this? How would you build it? What would you add to it?
I think I'll go just because I have probably the most experiences. I was born in one church and raised in another and went to college and came back. And so I think I've seen a lot. I've seen different cultures. I've seen different races. I've seen different, scales as far as like a mega church, so to speak, or an intimate church can kind of look like. The first thing that I would want is, like, if I was to make a soup, like my stock would be that feeling of being just welcomed, of being loved, of no matter what I've got going on or who I am, that is one place that I can go to and I know they love me. You know, I walked in this morning and everybody got a hug. I wanted to see, you know, Pastor Will and, you know, Miss Gwen and Papa J, as I call him, Deacon Jones, of, you know, I want to hug and love on everybody because I feel so welcomed here. I think the meat of that soup or that stock would be Bible teaching, of like true Bible teaching. And I think that's something that we see here. You know, when I first joined the church, you were in the middle of the Revelation study. And that's such a hard book of the Bible to kind of break down. We're in the middle of a pandemic and everybody's wondering, is this Revelation? Is this what we've got going on? We were, you know, you were in here recording at night and by yourself, and I would kind of sit over in the corner to kind of make sure the camera didn't fall over. But in order to be involved in a Bible teaching way, if you know, some of the things that I learned in that study was just that the letters in the beginning of Revelation are to the church. Is not the condemning of the world, not yet. He gets to that later. But first things first is he wants to deal with the church. You know, the 7 letters to the 7 churches is something that I think we all could learn about. You know, Minister Hogan or Assistant Pastor Hogan, I've always appreciated her educational background because she can truly teach the word in a way to where you can see it in an applicable way. I think if I had to add like my vegetables and, you know, my onion and my garlic and, you know, all the other stuff that adds it flavor would be the cutting edge things that we do. So whether that be living in the Word and having an awesome, you know, Sunday school that looks different in order to be able to have an opportunity to do that. There is an industrial kitchen in the back that I just think is phenomenal, right? Like, I didn't grow up in a church that had that, so to speak. My mom was on the hospitality ministry, and that meant on Sunday night, early in the wee hours of Sunday morning, she was in there cooking and bringing stuff in. And there's just something about breaking bread with one another that creates that fellowship. You know, even we see it in the Bible of Jesus ate. That's one thing I know is going to be in heaven because I got enough verse and scripture to know that Jesus liked to eat. And I think that is something that is helpful. I also think, though, the thing that makes it good is kind of like the cornbread that goes with it that adds a little extra to it is those practical needs of being able to have practical needs met. I know we have Sweetie's Closet. I know we have, you know, different ministries and different things that reach out. But to be able to say, you know, hey, this is what I've got going on, and be able to address it in a timely manner and in a way that, you know, mirrors the Lord. And what that means to me is, you know, not only can I help you in this situation, but I will also show you how not to be in it again. You know, when the woman, the adulterer, the woman who was caught in the act of adultery, she's being thrown to the feet of Jesus in the church, because those are the Pharisees. The leaders of the church were throwing her to the feet of Jesus like, okay, what do you say we do with her? And Jesus is clear, I'm not going to abandon the law. The law says, you know, that she should be killed. But he who has no sin cast the first stone. And I love that how after her accusers are gone, Jesus looks to her. He doesn't look to the Pharisees. He doesn't say, y'all were right, I'm wrong, or I'm right, you're wrong. He doesn't say anything like that. And I think when he's scribbling in the ground, I personally believe he's writing down the names of all of their mistresses, because that's my Jesus. That's the way I read my Bible. It says that he knelt down, he started scribbling in the ground, and I think that he started looking at them one by one, like, hey, you know you got some sin. You know you can't pick up a rock. But what he says to her is, you know, where are your accusers? Like, I have stepped in and I have saved you from death, but also go and sin no more. And so I think we have to have a level of grace and truth that says the grace is you don't deserve the death that your sin warrants, right? Like, you do deserve it, but I'm going to keep you from it, right? But the truth is also that bondage will continue to attack your life, and so I'm going to equip you and grace you to be able not to do that anymore.
Jamar, talk to me.
I can't go down a menu like Avery did here, you know.
Y'all,
so.
I'm hungry.
So mine's going to be out of order, but worship, I'll say worship experience is something that's big. because everything that Avery said I agree with, and that'll be in my pot as well. But worship experience is something special. Worship sets the atmosphere. It sets the mood in the place. If I could go secular, it's something about music. When I used to go to the club and used to be in the club, if the music wasn't right, it's time to get out. And what they did,
DJ wasn't hitting. He
wasn't
wasn't doing it.
And what they did at the end, they'll play a song or a church song to get you out of there, to make you leave the place. But if the worship experience is not there, I don't feel the spirit in most places. Now, you don't need a worship experience for a church, but it's something about worship. Any church you go to, the worship experience is on point. Youth and young adult inclusion. That's something that a church has to have. It's good to have our senior saints and our older saints, but at some point, they're going to go home to be with Jesus. So we have to have a generation following that's going to come up and be able to be included and not ran out to the streets, because sometimes, and I know I'm not going to pivot off, I'm going to stay on point, but sometimes the church runs the youth and runs the young adults away. In the world, they feel more accepted in the world. They feel more accepted by the BETs.
Let me pause you there.
Pause me there. Okay.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah,
No?
No, and I want to do this with grace. But I want to pause you there because I want to ask you to kind of expound. How do you think that happens? What do you think happens?
With that, it's going to come, it's love. The love, they don't feel the love that should be in this place. The church is supposed to be, I call it a hospital, a place you come in if you're sick, if you're not well, a place you can get prayed for, a place you can get hands laid on you to turn you around. But what happens in most churches, again, I'm not calling out Nineveh, I'm not calling out any church in particular, but what happens, the youth come in and they don't feel accepted. They want to do something, they want something to do, but the older folks, no, baby, we don't want you to do that. You need to do this. Stay in your place. Sit here. Go there. And but in the world, they can do what they want to do. The world tells them you can be who you are, what you want to be. And but in the church, that acceptance and that inclusion is not there for them.
I would even go a little bit further. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to summarize, like, what I heard was rejection and offense. Like he said, like things that will turn you away. And, we're going to call it out. Like, it's being rejected. It's being offended. It's unforgiveness. It's hatefulness. It's judgmentalness. It's things that the Bible is very clear, are not fruits of the Spirit, but yet they find their ways in the garden of it and not really having the opportunity to deal with that. I think, what Jamar is talking about is something that we all see. I mean, we all got a past. I call it my BC days, before I knew Christ. Even though I was raised in church, I had some time when I was in college and, I pledged a sorority and I'm out, we here. And I think Jamar is right, that there's a sense of praise or a sense of, the devil is very strategic, and the three things that we see him tempt Jesus with were, greed and the opportunity for pride and the opportunity to satisfy his flesh, right? And so if those are the three things, the three really cardinal sins that we see, that even Jesus himself was tempted with, if you worship me, I'll give you everything. And we realize very quickly that in an age where there's social media, where there are people who can constantly give you their opinion, whether it be on a job and you get a positive report, or whether it be, in your DMs and someone can say something to you in a way that makes you feel good, when you are feeding that ability to be praised or to be acknowledged or to be seen, but the church won't give that to you. The church wants you to sit down and wants you to be quiet and wants you to, earn your keep, or, go up through the ranks, whereas social media or even your job or whatever will praise you and say, man, look at you, you're doing so many hours. So now I'm tempted to quit going to church in order to work more, because if I work more, I get more gratification, or I get seen, or I get acknowledgement, whereas the church is never satisfied with what I do. Does that make sense?
Well, so that does make sense.
Thank you.
No, but so how much of that, though, I would say, okay, so if I had my mixture, my little pot, I would want that, for sure, that love, that grace, that acceptance. But at the same time, should we not have standards? I would also want standards. I would also want to look at someone and try to hold them to a higher standard, like expect some kind of etiquette. And yeah, sure, there are ways that could happen. You could offer some kind of education. You could do it in more subtle ways. You could do it in more. You could give that truth in more graceful ways. I agree, but also I don't want to come to church and it looks like I'm at a hangout
in the world.
Yeah, everybody's in t-shirts and basketball shorts or flops and whatever. So I do like that higher expectation though. That's an element that I actually would want.
Yeah.
Is for church to be a place where it doesn't have to be a fashion show, but
You're talking about clothing,
right? Well,
okay.
no, I'm in many ways, but just clothing is like an easier example. So it doesn't have to be like like this over extravagant. Hey, toot your nose up, put on all this, but it could be some kind of
excellence.
Of course.
Yeah. What I hear, I didn't mean to cut you off. Could keep going. But it's that sense of excellence and integrity, right? That's something that my old pastor, Pastor Mike, used to say to us at Faith Chapel, that we do everything with excellence and integrity, that we are the most loving church in all the world, but it's going to be excellent. We're going to start on time. We're going to end on time. We're going to be integral. We're not going to cut any corners. We're going to do things the right way. But D, what I hear you also saying is biblical. There is a standard in place of Paul. All of his beautiful letters to the church have a standard that is held on to them about, if your brother has sinned against you, go to them in private. Or if a believer has gone away, I want to say that's in Peter. If a believer has strayed away, then, gently bring them back into the fold and to have an opportunity to talk to them in private, and then you get your reward for restoring that person's soul back to Christ. That's biblical. I don't think that's judgmental or saying, oh, I want you to give us your best. But, you don't go to work a certain way. So why is it that you would give more to your job and not the person who provided the job for you to even have in the first place?
And so, and also,
I'm sorry
to cut you off, but, okay, so, and also like from a youthful perspective, like why should I come to church and expect a traditional congregation or generations before me? Why would I come to church and expect of them what I don't even go through life expecting of? So for example, we talked about jobs, right? So if I go to work, why would I go to work and expect them to have to treat me a certain way, be nice to me, welcome me? I'm coming here and I'm making you money, blah blah blah. No, that's just not realistic. When I go to work, I'm grateful for that. I understand I'm getting paid to do a service. I understand I'm expected to do a job to a particular degree. So when I come to church, why would I come here and understandably so it's voluntary, going to church.
But is it?
Yeah, but you think about it like this. I was actually about to get to that point. So I go to work, and of course I get like a let's say a financial compensation, right?
Okay.
But then, so why would I not look at church? I go to church and I get a spiritual compensation. I don't know, like I'm getting deposits of like spiritual currency and I guess into the kingdom of God, And so is voluntary, but also this isn't. No one here could give me, what it is I need. Only God can give me that, and so I'm doing this not to impress everyone else. I'm doing this for God. So why would I let me coming in here and somebody looking at me, maybe I'm not dressed to a certain degree, why would I let that run me off?
But I hate to call. I'm sorry. But it happens. That's the thing. It does happen in the church, and that's one thing. We have to have love in the church. I've seen plenty of what people call ushers run people off at churches. Mm-hmm. It has happened. So we had to have that love as well in the church itself. Go ahead, Nicole.
Well, I think it's a tango. I really do. I think it's a tango. I think it is. As a young person, I come to church and I realize that I'm stepping into a sacred space. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it is as a church member, as a person who is a active goer, participant of church, that I need to look like Christ. And so I think it is a tango. It's a relationship. It's not they got to act like this when they come to church, and it's not I need to expect them to assuage everything that I do. It's a both and. It's I need acceptance in the building but it's also, I need to realize I'm walking into a space. I don't ever walk into a business meeting. If I'm going to a business meeting, we're going to talk about money, I'm putting on a suit and tie. And if I don't put on a tie, I'm putting on hard bottom shoes. If I'm walking into those experiences, I'm not going to dress like I'm dressing to go play golf.
Now that uncomfort though, so of course, Jamar, you say we should, what we do need that love. We do need that love in church, but I think that is love. That truth is a part of that love. Yes, grace is the other half of it, but truth is also a part of that. So, why? Yes, you can maybe say in a better way, we expect this standard of you, but please let it be known that we will let you know we expect a standard of you. We don't want. Why would you give God your first 10%?
Supposed to.
Supposed to, of course. But so you go into church, you think about it, you starting your week. Let's say you start your week on a Sunday, and church is the first thing you do when you wake up. That's your first 10%.
Right.
Make it your best 10.
But I agree with you. I think even with the analogy that you gave earlier about employment, we are living in a time of, they're calling it the great resignation. Of people will leave a job. Like I have colleagues, full-blown attorneys who will walk out and say, I ain't doing this no more. Well, what are you going to do? I don't know, but I ain't doing this. And I think sometimes we have to have that reality check of everything is negotiable, right? Of how you treat people, how you are expected to be treated, the standard that you hold up to them. I think Cole is right. It is a tango. It is absolutely a give and take, a both and kind of situation, but also it goes both ways. So if you're seeing the great resignation in jobs, you're also seeing the great resignation and exit out of churches. Of people are choosing to say, you know what, I don't want to do it this way, or I don't like this. And it's a generational thing. My dad is a boomer, and so his generation will probably think people just don't want to work, right? Or, I'm a millennial, and I'm like, no, we picking our mental health over a job, because if I am working this job but I'm stressed out, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, it's not enough money that can fix that, right? I think church is the same way. If I'm at church, it's not that people don't want to come to church, it's people don't want to be abused when they at church. This is like you said, it's voluntary, and yes, it is necessary as far as my spiritual growth goes. The Bible clearly says don't neglect the fellowship of the brethren. Like, that's true. However, there are also a lot of people who feel like I can read my Bible on my own, I can go to Bedside Baptist, and I ain't got to deal with that. And I think sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves of it works both ways, right? If people don't come to church, the church will die, right?
True.
If I'm people and I don't go to church, there's a reason why the Bible says not to neglect it. I'm going to miss out on something. It's going to be something lost. But I think it is irresponsible and borderline, negligent to say, well, that's just how it is, and if you want it, then you just got to accept it. Because in a job, you need a job. I got to pay rent. I need my health insurance and all this other stuff. But I also don't have to take certain things in order to be there, when there are other places that, kind of like Jamar was talking about earlier, that will offer those same supplemental things to me. So I guess my question then is, how do you keep both? How do you honor? I love the way that you talked about it in the introduction, Cole, is that, it's a tradition of progress. So how do you have both? How do you have tradition in a way that keeps the honor and the integrity of the church, but also progress in the sense of, the Bible says that, behold, I'm doing a new thing?
I like all the points you just brought up.
Thank you, D.
I
like your points.
Thank you. I don't know if we have, enough time for me to combat every point, or talk or go and expound on each point, but a couple of things that you said though. So you said that yes, it's other things that you can do. You're gonna value your mental health, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Now, let's use the job analogy one more time. Okay. Yeah, all of that's fine and dandy. I'm working at this job and I don't like what I'm doing, and I'll get to the point where, you know what, I need a mental health break. I need to step away from this. This is toxic to me, whatever it is. Yeah, that's gonna be all good for that first month, for that first couple of months. But then guess what? My bank account's gonna start talking to me. You know what? Other things, people are gonna want to hang out and want to do things. It's stuff that I have to do. So it's like, where do we go from valuing our mental health to just becoming mentally like weak? You know, I understand that we are in the beginning, and in the beginning of any kind of revolution, whatever it is, there's always an extreme before it balances itself out over the course of years. So I understand that, but there will be a point, there will be a time when it does balance out, and when it's balanced, I'm curious to know what that balance looks like. If that comes from us first realizing that, okay, maybe in the beginning of this, I was using mental health as a cloak to not want to become mentally tougher. You know, maybe I was using, you know, this is toxic and all of that stuff, but to not want to do like growth of myself and look at the things that I bring to this.
That's the part.
Where I'm
It's
not,
there.
you know, maybe I'm adding, maybe I'm part of the blame. You know, maybe I go to work and the job, and I'm looking at them like, oh, you're not doing this for me. I'm not getting noticed. I want to get a promotion. But am I staying that extra hour? Am I doing things to get me noticed? You know, so what I want to kind of highlight is, understandably so, there is a give and a take. It's a tango. You know, value the space you need. Value your personal needs, your mental needs, and all of that stuff. But understand that valuing your mental health, a part of that is being mentally tough. If you go to if you say you want to start to work on your body, you're not going to go, okay, I need to just not eat anymore,
Right.
or I need to just eat less and start to restrict myself. No, you're gonna start to factor in the gym. You're gonna start to factor in, you know, your water intake, et cetera, et cetera. So a part of it, mental health, is sure eliminating some of the toxicity, but then also, how do I get mentally tougher? How do I learn that persistence and discipline isn't always easy? I'm not always going to go into a spot, go to a place where there's these generations before me, and then I go, well, yeah, I have all of this stuff. Now be nice to me, or I'll just go somewhere else, and not think about the stuff that they had to go through to get what it is that they have. So why would I just have this child come in, and I'm like, okay, I had to, you know, not me, of course, but like my grandparents, I had to fight through segregation. I had to go through all of this stuff. Generations before that, slavery, all of this stuff. I had to go through all of the stuff I had to go through just to see this child come in who I'm providing for, be like, okay, give me, or I'll leave. No, where does your, how do you put in on this? What are you going to bring to the table?
Yeah. I agree. But I'm going to challenge you.
agree?
I'm going to challenge you.
You agree?
I'm going to challenge you. Martin Luther King, the foot soldiers, all of those folks were in their early 20s when they started the revolution.
Yes.
All of the people that we look back, and their cohorts are now in their 80s, 90s, and deceased, they were in their 20s when they were flipping over tables. And they were like, we are not going to take this anymore. That we are better than this. And I think often we forget that those people were that young when they were given the mantle to care for our entire race.
Yes.
I think it's often forgotten that Martin Luther King, when he had a whole PhD out here, was 23 years old when he was made the pastor of the church in Montgomery. And to that effect, I don't expect, and I'm gonna mention Jermaine. Jermaine, when I started playing the piano, I was like, Jermaine, my dream is I want to play with you. He was like, no. I'm gonna hand it to you one day, and of course that didn't happen. But I'm gonna hand it to you one day, and but my what I wanted was to play with him. I wanted him on the organ. I wanted to play the piano, and whoever else wanted to play in Ninevah's band that I had made up in my mind. That's how I wanted to do it. And I look at our church the same way. I want to play with you.
Yes.
Like, and I can't speak for other young people. I can't speak for them, but I know for me, and the way that I look at our church, I think our church works best when you have a Cole and a Pastor Will. It works best when you have somebody that's working with our missions that is not in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I think ministry works best when it is multi-generational, because then we get the great resignation. We can't be have mental health issues, and we can't have a toxic environment. But we built this, and then we can find a middle place that then attracts more. And that's just my personal opinion on the situation.
I agree. I think one of the best examples that we've seen here recently was Simone Biles and her taking her opportunity at the Olympics to step down and say, you know what, I'm not okay right now. In some of her post-Olympic interviews, she was very clear that I probably shouldn't have gone in the first place because I knew I had some things that I had been struggling with. I knew I had, some areas where my brain had not necessarily processed some of the trauma that I had been through and some of the stuff that I put my body through in order to get to this national stage. And then I got here and it crumbled, right? I think there takes a certain level of accountability and awareness where you need both. Like, I need that sense of accountability to know that I am my grandmother's dream to be an attorney and to be working at this big firm and doing all of this other stuff that is amazing. I remember my first week there, we had a family dinner or cookout or something, maybe it was Labor Day, and some of my family members were telling me, you are sitting at the table of houses that we used to clean. And that was real for me, right? At the same point in time, I know that if I allow that pressure to become all-consuming, I will make it a God. And I think we do that with church, that we have some things that are good and we try to make them God. Or, the church is a place that's supposed to glorify God and not be our God. It's kind of that same thing with Jamar and Dee were talking about, of if you live too much for their opinions, then you will completely miscategorize and misprioritize the actual things that you're supposed to be doing. If you care way too much about what people have to say about you, then you're not actually doing what God has told you to do. At the same point in time, for the people who have stuff to say, we have to hold ourselves accountable to say, am I being Christ-like in what I'm doing? Am I following the biblical principles that Paul and Peter and Jesus himself said about how to deal with certain situations? I think that's your answer. Your answer is you have to be both.
Yeah, I agree. I think just on one end, you need that kindness to kind of, as we've been touching on, but then on the other end, try to have some understanding, So I would say so to go back to your last questions, which I really didn't answer, my main ingredient would be vision. I think if everybody, and I know that comes from like a higher up kind of, that's leadership, leaders kind of provide that vision and those goals and stuff like that, of course. But if everybody had a common goal, a common vision for what they see, for what they want the church to be, what they want the church to look like, what it is they bring to the church. If everybody understood that, I think everybody would better be equipped to, kind of shoulder roll a lot of the stuff that just isn't important, that doesn't aid in to get into that
Put
picture.
first things first.
Of course, first thing first, just building a team more so. Yeah.
And real quick, just to go back to acceptance, and I'm going to end it here. But acceptance, we do get it confused. What you hit on is be tougher. So sometimes we take that saying, "Come as you are." We take it, we run with it. I can come in there in a miniskirt. I can come in there, my pants sagging. That's not to come as you are. It's going to come. It's talking about your heart, it's talking about your body, and your mental space. If you're not right there, come on to church. You don't have to be perfect to come in this place. A lot of them say, I want to be clean. Man, I just smoked that blunt yesterday. I just drunk, was at the club last night on the classic. I can't come to church. No, you come on in. That's what we need you or whatnot. And that's what I'm talking about, of the running off, where the people in the church tend to run those folks off. No, we got to, bring them on in, and that's what we teach them. We talking about the vision. Our vision should be to bring up others behind us. Again, this is a hospital. If you come in sick, it's time for us to heal you. It's time for us to help get you to that place, because that's what Jesus wants us to do.
Now, that is real. That is for sure. You bring them in, you accept them, but let's use the trainer analogy. If I have somebody who comes to me overweight and they want me to train, and I'm not a trainer by any means, but if I were to train somebody, I would say, okay, I would accept them and I would let them know, and I wouldn't make them feel bad for where they are. at this current point. But I will let them know that your journey is going to be tough. It's going to be some hard days. It's going to be days you don't want to be here. But we have to get through it if you want to get to said goal that you have right here that we're both trying to achieve together.
I think the way that you can kind of summate both of what you just said is, in the hospital, you have both. You have patients, and then you also have caregivers. And I think if we are going to use the analogy of it's a hospital, that you come, you can be sick, and you can be made well, that there are also people, shout out to the nurses, shout out to my mommy, who
Shout out,
also,
mommy.
Come on, Gwen.
come on, sweetie in the back, shout out to our nurses. But to say that once I get out of this bed, once I have been healed, once I have been made whole, it is now my turn to be the nurse. It's now my turn to assist the great physician in bringing that healing there. And not forgetting that I was once in this bed, that I was once messed up with the IVs and I needed stuff going on. And so a lot of times I think, we have to, the truth is, let's see all pictures of the hospital. Of the hospital, not only is a place for the sick to be made well, but those are your caregivers. Those are the people who are actually going to be the person that starts the IV or that wipes the behind or whatever the case may be, or be the person that keeps the hospital running. My mom has been joking all for the last couple months about, it takes more than just the nurses. We need to honor the janitorial staff, because if they don't come clean these rooms, there's not a bed to put anybody in, And so I think that the church has to remind itself constantly that I am called to be both. That there will be some days when I'm a patient, there are going to be some days when I am leading the way, and not forgetting one or the other.
That's it. It is not to stay where you are. That's the big thing. Don't come in and stay where you are. So if you go to that trainer, you can't say, I want that six-pack, but you still out there drinking beers and eating donuts. It's not going to happen. And that's what some of the churches are. We try to mirror the world. And that's what I don't want the church to get to, where we try to mirror the world, because I've been to some churches, and I'm like, man, am I at the club? I'm at church. I'm confused. I don't know what I'm getting into, because those churches like that are a fling. You're only there for a short while because you're not getting that substance or that meat in the pot that Avery was over there cooking. You're not getting that meat. You're not getting that cornbread. And that's what we got here at Nineveh. We have that substance.
I absolutely agree. Anybody got any final closing comments?
Thank you.
No, honestly,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
For real, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I want us to remember and keep the conversation going as we, in the broadcast, that we have a legacy of being progressive. And we have to constantly ask ourselves, if we're not moving, we need to constantly look at, if we're not moving forward, that we're dying. That if we're not changing things, we're dying. And I want you especially if you're one of our seasoned saints, I want you to ask yourself, what was I doing 60 years ago, 40 years ago? What were we moving that made where I'm going, or what church I was a part of exciting, a place to be? Because I remember hearing somebody tell me that they were so excited when they started clapping in their choir, that the young people were happy that they could clap and rock like that. That was cutting edge. Or when their church got a musician, or when the kids were allowed to do WXYZ. And remember that there was a time when the things that you consider normal weren't normal. I believe that Nineveh, and I believe that churches like us have a lot that we can add to this world, to this city, to these neighborhoods, but we got to be around and tell the story. Now, of course, it is Sunday morning, and it is giving time. We've just had a wonderful conversation, and the church, Nineveh, I can honestly vouch for, does missions. The missions are planning all types of things to do. We are in the community. We are overseas. We're doing all types of things, and we want to keep the ministry vibrant and moving. And so this morning, if you are interested in giving to Nineveh, Nineveh has a couple of simple ways for you to give. First thing you can do is you can type the words "Give Nineveh" in your text box and send it to the number 77977. That is "Give Nineveh" to 77977. Or you can stop by the church. Somebody's here, and they'll be here until noon, and they'd love to wait on you. Or you can pop your tithe and your offering in the mail. Nineveh's address is 1067th Street North, Birmingham, Alabama 35206. Let's pray, y'all. God, we thank you for conversation. God, we thank you for open minds, open hearts, God. God, we thank you for a legacy of progressiveness, God. We thank you that you put us here, that you've sent us to Nineveh to be the young light in this house, God. We believe that there are more young people that want to be here, God. We thank you for the legacy and those who have laid the foundations before us, God. We thank you for a pastor who is willing to let us have conversations and be candid, God. God, we pray that this conversation is not just a conversation, but it is a running board. It is a foundation for things to come. God, we praise you. We thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We'll see you next week in person in the sanctuary. I look forward to seeing you in your white and black and to seeing your lovely smile. Y'all be blessed.